pleasure to be here today. My name is Robyn Scott. I'm co-founder and CEO of Apolitical, which I'll tell you a little bit about in a moment. But first of all, just to say why I'm so pleased to be talking to the Minister today. Digital is at the core of solving and unlocking a lot of the solutions we need in policy. It underpins almost all the most interesting frontiers we're having in government. So a minister who's in charge of digital has an incredible lever for change and influence. So it's wonderful to be talking to Margarete today. I'm going to let her introduce herself briefly, and then we're going to jump into some of the details and the frontiers that she's working on and that we see around the world in governments in rich countries and poor countries who are all struggling with slightly different but related challenges.
So, hi, Robyn. Thank you very much. I'm very happy to be here with you today, also and discuss a little bit about the digital state of Austria. You asked me to give a little bit of my background. So, when I look around, I see some of you have worked together with me. I have 22 years of experience in IT and telco industries in Austria and abroad. So started out many years ago and have done almost all functions which you can have in a company, starting from credit and collection, collecting money, up to logistics, and then technical departments, then or services department, also sales, and then a long time as a CEO. So I think that points it out, and now I jumped into politics.
Fantastic, thank you. Now, one of the questions we get a lot at Apolitical is the difference between the public sector and the private sector. Just a quick poll, how many of you are in the private sector? And in the public sector? So pretty good balance here today. So I'm really interested in your experience. Two questions. First of all, what do you think government has to learn from the private sector? And this is the question we always hear. This is the obvious one. The less obvious question is, what do you think the private sector should perhaps learn from government?
So definitely what government can learn from the private sector is the agile work or agile mode of working. This is actually what we are now doing with our projects that we are implementing at the moment, a new style of working. Also to have the view always on the customer, so to the outside. Sometimes governments are much too keen on what is happening on the inside and organizations and what do we do, but the view should always be to the outside, which is the customer. In our case, it's all Austrians, irrespective if they are in private or in business functions. They are our customers, and this is the view we always should have. Our view should be, this is the center of our world. We should always turn around that and never lose sight of that. On the other hand, what companies can learn from governments is also what I experience. Maybe I talk a little bit about the experience I have the last 6 months. Is we are really keen to implement. And this is a little bit, we're doing it like in companies where we have a look what has to be done, and we are implementing it. It's not about reinventing the wheel again and again and producing another PowerPoint and another paper. There have been a lot of studies and a lot of papers. We get a lot of feedback what has to be done, and this is now being executed. Maybe this is also what we have in common a little bit now, especially in our government. What I see, what is very new for me and very exciting is the broader view, the bigger view, especially when the European Council is coming up in July. I'm lucky that I can implement and I can influence many things which I have always wanted to happen. So that is the good thing about being in this position.
That's great, and it echoes a lot of what we hear. Just a little bit on what we're doing at Apolitical. So we created Apolitical, which is a a global policy sharing platform, because we thought it was crazy that a traveler could find out about lumps in a mattress on the other side of the world, but someone working in government couldn't quickly find out what's going on in other countries. So there's lots of duplication, lots of reinvention of the wheel. So that's very much bringing what works well in the private sector into government. But we also wanted to challenge an often incorrect assumption that nothing works in government. We wanted to show that there are great people working on really interesting projects, often in much, much more difficult circumstances than the private sector faces. And one of the things we hear again and again from people who've moved from the private sector into government is not only an excitement about how much power you do have when you can change things because the scale is so big, but also a humility about how difficult it is to make things happen because you have so many different stakeholders. So I've been humbled working with people in government and seeing how many heroic, mission-driven individuals there are. Just before we jump into more discussion about digital itself, another quick poll. Who has had a really bad experience working, interacting with the public sector over technology of any sort? Who's had a really great experience? Okay, almost, maybe a few less, but not too bad. Who thinks governments should do more to embrace digital and technology? Cool. So now, Austria's a leader, that's why we're here. Can you tell us a bit about what you're doing?
Yeah. So I think the first important step is to at least have this ministry, which was the Ministry of Economic Affairs before and is now the Ministry of Digital and Economic Affairs. So for me it was important to have this in the name because it expresses that digital transformation is one of the most important things and needs to get attention and needs to get time to spend on this and the opportunity to solve the issues. What the next step is, you need a structure. As you have mentioned before, people working in government surroundings often face challenges because the solutions are, and the challenges, the world is complex, it's not too easy. Yeah? There is no simple solution often, there are a lot of stakeholders in there. So next step, we need to form a structure which is supporting the people with the good ideas to implement, to be able to implement the projects. And how do you do this? What we did is created the role of a chief digital officer. So in my department, we do have a CDO, a chief digital officer, and there are chief digital officers in all the different ministries. So there's one in the Ministry of Internal Affairs, one in the Ministry of Health, because we have different topics that we are doing. And also, of course, the budgets are allocated to the different ministries, and there are different interests. So you need to form a task force led by the CDO of the, of course, Ministry of Digital Affairs, together with the CDOs of the other countries of the other ministries, like other countries, which I was working for, in companies, so that these CDOs form a common vision what needs to be done. And the view is twofold. It's what can we do to implement e-government in a better way? What projects do we need there? And the second view is on the market. What does the market need, for example, in e-health and in other areas? So this is the basic structure. Then, of course, you need an overview on the budget. You need a budget for digital, which we have. If you don't have a budget, you don't have money, you cannot focus on the projects. And this is what we immediately arranged for at the beginning. And then you can start the different projects where you need the vision and then the execution on the different projects, which we can go in detail.
Yeah, and you've talked about bringing everything together in one place and making it super accessible in different ways. Can you explain that a little bit, the portal and your focus on mobile?
Well, we have identified very quickly, and really quickly was because it was only Yeah, I say that 2 weeks after taking over the job, and some of the team members are here and know how quickly we did it. We identified the main projects we need to work on. So project number 1, main project, is from e-government to mobile government. That should express that we are service-oriented. We want to do as many processes digital and in a mobile way. Why I'm using this mobile government topic? Because it forces everybody to rethink the processes. Because it's the wrong way just to take the processes from the analog world in the digital world. You need to simplify it and need to rethink the processes. And then we decided, okay, for the first step, we will need a common platform that will be launched, by the way, in June. It is called Österreich GV.at. It's a common platform where we reunite a lot of services that are separate at the moment. And the target is that each Austrian should have access to the different services via this portal. So, of course, it's in a living stage. It will be not super perfect when we launch it, because we want to use time to market, and together with the Austrians we want to develop it. For example, we have already had in the project development, by the way, we are using rapid prototyping for that. We have created in the Bundesrechenzentrum a project room where external companies, startups work together, and other companies work together with our people from Bundesrechenzentrum as well as from our government team, so that they can really be quick in the implementation. And that's the first time this type of working has been applied. And I was not interested in a PowerPoint, but it's action learning. And the action learning is in June. We are staying in front of the press, and we're going to present it, yeah, with all the inputs we have, with all the status where we are, because it's then an ongoing process. That's one of the projects. There are others too.
Fantastic. And just building on your point about mobile, one of the most interesting trends we're seeing around the world is, in the same way we've had leapfrogs in the private sector, in mobile phone technology and solar technology, in poor countries where they've simply gone faster and further because they lacked infrastructure, we're seeing exactly the same leapfrogs in policy. So just for example, a lot of government via digital starts on mobile in poorer countries. We're also seeing participatory budgeting, which is now used in 2,500 places around the world, where you get to vote on where money is spent. That started in Brazil. Similarly, there's a open data platform, which followed on from some of the platforms in wealthier countries, but it's now the leader. It's been used to inspire an American platform and inspire an African platform, because it's thought so much about user interaction and design. So there's some really interesting lessons from unexpected places in digital. I'll just share one other, at the other end of the spectrum, much more technical, something we find fascinating. In New Zealand, they're experimenting with making all their legislation machine readable. So breaking down the building blocks of government, laws, so who gets what, when, under what circumstances, and allowing third parties to build applications on that, which allows much more proximity between government and business, and it also allows governments to project out scenarios of how new legislation might affect people without making undue mistakes. So there are a whole lot of fascinating frontiers like that. I'll give the last word to the Minister, and then I think we're going to have some Q&A. Anything else we should know about what Austria is doing?
Well, what I have explained now is the whole world of being an individual and interacting with the government. It's all about best service. So best practice in services, this is what we want to achieve. We are by far not there, but this is, and it all is transforming into a digital world, of course, step by step. The second topic is for companies. What we need to achieve for companies is also what I call the once only principle. It's called once only principle, like Estonia is doing and others. So, and also here we do not have to reinvent the idea again. though the implementation will be different because each country is different and each legacy system is different. Estonia has no history, so they could start on the green field. They have no federalism. They have no different responsibilities as we have this. So what we need to have a look with once only principle, I mean that companies need to give the information to the public system once, and it is with their permission reused. So at the moment, companies are telling us, we are giving you information again and again, and you have all the information that you need. So for Austria, for example, it means that Austrian companies giving information 230 million per year, using around filling in around 55 items per case. And then it's also, it doesn't matter if it's analog or digital, it costs us 4 to 3 billion. So if we manage to do this, and we started a work group on this to implement it, we gain a lot of, and the companies can go out, address new market, have new products, better services, but not always giving the same information again and again. So this is a second big project we're working on.
Fantastic. Well, I'm sure there are many people here who'll look forward to that. Do we have time for some questions?
Absolutely. It became quite official, by the way, with our very first digital minister in the history of Austria, and sharing the stage with a brilliant entrepreneur. Robyn Scott and Margarete Schramboeck are now answering our questions. We're switching to Slido. And first question, what about open government, open data?
So there is first projects on that. So we are starting to addressing this, but it's too early to talk about it, but it's something we're looking at, as a lot of technologies are open. How can we use the data, reuse it, and make it available, but also in a way that we respect the data privacy? So we'll have a working project already on that.
One of the most interesting things happening around data and data privacy is in Amsterdam and Barcelona, where there's an experiment with, instead of just asking citizens for data, with the expectation that will help them, making the contract explicit. So you as a citizen give up your data with the understanding that you will get a service for it. So it's much more transactional in the best possible way.
Then I can take the third question, which is like the UK. Immediately after I have taken the role, I've looked at the UK model, and yes, I can definitely think that we are going to have something like that, and maybe sooner than you might think, rather than later. So watch the news of the next 2 weeks or 3 weeks, then you will see what's going to happen there.
Thank you for answering these questions via Slido. Ladies, it's a great pleasure to have you here. How long are you going to stay here, Robyn?
Too briefly, but I hope to come back.
Okay.
We will stay in
Come
contact.
back soon.
I'll be here the whole afternoon.
Okay, we keep in touch. Margarete promised that. And thank you for being here. Frau Ministerin, vielen Dank fürs Kommen. Danke. Bye-bye.